welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful. I am back in the studio today with the next video in the series I'm working on using gel prints. So if you are just joining me for the very first time, welcome. I hope you enjoy this video, and if you do, please give me a thumbs up, leave a comment and say hello down below. And if you have not subscribed already, please hit the subscribe button and then the little bell so you'll be notified when I post a new video, and that way you won't miss out on all the fun we're having here. So this is the third video in the new series. Now in the playlist, which I will put down below, there are some older videos also on gel print, and I just went ahead and left those in there in case there's anything in there that's interesting to you. But I did start a new series. And the first video, I showed some of the art projects that I have been working on using my gel prints. And so I wanted to kind of share some tutorials on how I do these. And hopefully in the process of working on this series, I'll come up with some new ideas, and this playlist will just keep growing and growing. So today's video is going to be on what to do with the gel prints that we created in the last video. So if you have not watched those two, and maybe you're just starting out in gel printing, or you don't have all the equipment and that sort of thing yet, I decided to go ahead and take a couple days, scan all the prints, or at least my 36 favorite prints. Out of the group, I probably did, I would say, double that maybe in the last couple of days. So I chose my favorites and put them in a digital kit for you. So I want to share that with you really quickly, and then we'll get to next steps for the papers. So just real quick, if you haven't purchased one of my digital kits before, you'll see the thumbnail on my Etsy shop looks like this, and I will put a link down below for this listing. And you can check out, I have other digitals in my Etsy shop as well. So I want to share with you, this one's going to be a little bit different. The two bubble kits that I've done were also done this way. And so I'm just going to refresh your memory. If you haven't purchased in this fashion, it's a little bit different, and kind of walk you through what to do. It's super easy, but doing it a little bit different allows me to go beyond the limit of what Etsy will allow you to list in one listing, and put 36 designs into one listing. Otherwise, I probably would have to break this up into 3 different listings. And so this way you can get them all at once. I like to have a nice variety so that there's a lot of colors to work with, because as you see me working on these projects, you see I use a lot of color. And to have the variety and create the papers that we're going to make from these, you need a lot of different ones. So I'll go through this and show you how it will look when you download it, and then go through each of the papers real quick. So like I said, you're going to see this thumbnail. They were all done in 300 DPI, so they are high quality. I sized them to 8.5 by 11. I did them on an 8 by 10 gel plate. So I just adjusted that so that if you wanted to print on letterhead and have them borderless for a project, you could do that. If you want to print on A4 paper, you can also do that. You'll just adjust those accordingly and just tell your printer that's the size you're printing on. But because they're backgrounds like this, there won't be much distortion or anything like that. The scale of the pattern may just change. So you can figure that out at your end. I do have videos on purchasing digitals with a lot of detailed information. So you can find that video as well. If you're unfamiliar with this, I'll put the link, if I remember, in the description of this video also. Okay, so you'll see this thumbnail, and I wanted to point out, you can tell how bright the colors are. And I printed this just so that you could see the true colors that you can get. This was done on Epson 44-pound premium presentation matte. And I will put a link for that. That's like a thin cardstock. And I like to print it on this so that you can really see the quality that you can get printing it at the highest quality with a really good paper. So that's probably the best paper I have. And then I do have some examples to compare the originals to better paper versus cheap copy paper. Okay, when you go to do the download, you're going to, instead of a file full of all of the actual images, you're going to see just this PDF, and it will verify which pack that you purchased. I've called this volume 1 so that if I do future gel print packs, they'll just be numbered accordingly. What you need to do is you don't even have to print this out. You're just going to download it, because this is actually a link to the file where all of these are stored. So I have them stored in a Google Drive file. So this will just take you to that file, and then from there you'll see all 36 images, and then you can just download them. You can just drag and drop them depending on what kind of computer you have. I work on an Apple, but you can just download those and then find them wherever your downloads are and create a folder for yourself on your computer. So you literally click on the word here, and that's where the link is embedded. Okay, so that's what you're going to download from Etsy. And then you will in that Google Drive file, you'll find all 36 of these images. So today I printed them just because there was 36 of them. I went ahead and printed them on cheap copy paper, 21 pound, just, I say cheap, it's Hammer Mill copy paper, the one I'm using now, but it's just, you can get any brand. It's not really going to matter if you're not too worried about the quality, if you're using them for collage and that sort of thing. So I did print these in a couple different ways, so I wanted to, so that you can compare. This was just done without changing my settings. This is how an 8.5 by 11 will print on most printers. It creates a little border around the edge. Again, if you have a printer that can print borderless, you can print this borderless. But this is just on, again, 21 pound Hammer Mill paper. This one I printed, and I told my printer to print it at 90%. You could go even less, because today we're going to start working with these scrap white borders. So if you're not going to make your own gel prints, but you want to do these projects, they include having these white borders. Now, for the way that I'm going to do it, I probably would have created a less of a border or more of a border, and you'll see when we go to do the project. But you might shrink it down to 80%, or this one's 90, 85 or 80%, even if you want a wider border. Okay, so this was printed on 32 pound Hammer Mill paper. So it's a better quality paper than this one, because this Hammer Mill is, I believe, more of a presentation quality. So it's a little bit thicker, but if you can see that, the colors are just a little bit more vibrant on this one. Okay, so that's that difference. Now I'm going to show you, this is actually the first paper in the group. It's number 1. This is the original, which is metallic. Okay. And I printed it the first time just on the 21 pound printer paper. And so you can tell the difference. It's a little bit darker, not as vibrant. Then I printed it. I didn't change the color or anything from, these two are actually just the same. I printed it again without creating my border. And I did this one on Epson paper. Now, Epson's premium presentation paper is even a higher quality than this Hammer Mill paper. And I know these are two different images, but this one is much more vibrant and bright and saturated in the color than even this one. So my tip is, whenever, depending on what your project is, if you want the most vibrant, bright, true to the original, you're going to use a higher quality paper, and make sure the quality that you tell your printer to print matches the paper you're using. So on some of these, I even used just a normal quality and didn't even use the best quality. So I think this one is again on 21 pound paper, and it's with a high quality though. Same with this one. And same with this one, I believe. And then I accidentally changed my settings. And this one, you can tell, is a little bit darker. Not as vibrant, but maybe dull is a better word. You can see this red is a little more brown and not as bright as the red in this one. So this is same thing. It's just, this is normal quality and this is best quality with the same paper. So that's just a kind of a visual. It's a subtle difference, but depending on your project, you might want it to be better quality, but maybe it's going to be layered with lots of other things and it doesn't matter. And then you would just use normal quality. It won't use as much ink. I'm printing on an Epson ET, which stands for Echo Tank 8500. And that's the printer that I'm using. And I like it because it has the ink that you pour in. And so it lasts a lot longer. So I'm just going to flip through. These now are all done with high quality on 21-pound Hammermill copy paper. So you'll get a variety. I wanted to have some light, some dark, some bright, some kind of moodier colors because I like that. But these were just 36 of the ones that I thought turned out the best. Now, when I did these, obviously I cropped them and cleaned up the edges. So in your projects, you'll get fine straight edges instead of the grungy edges. I was just concerned about if these projects aren't what someone's using these for, they might feel that it's a waste having those grungy edges. So if you would like me to do a kit and leave those, it's too late for this one because I've already altered everything. But I can, maybe a next kit, if you like the grungy edges, I can leave those on. So it's just a different, depends on what you want to use, use these for. But I thought even this with not the greatest quality, not the greatest paper, they came out really nice. These will be fun to have for collage because I'm going to end up using all my originals. Of course, I enjoy doing gel prints, so I never mind creating more. But you may, that may not be your thing. So there we go. I think this is the last one. So just a nice variety of papers and colors. So if you, again, would like to have that and not do the printing yourself, or the gel printing yourself, you'll have to print these, then you can find those in my Etsy shop. So again, I will put the link down below, and now we'll get to what our next steps are. Okay, so again, I'm going to get these things out of the way. These are the things that we're kind of working on. And like I said, I ended up with, this is maybe, I don't even know, not even half, because I've already been doing the next steps just to prepare for this video. So what we want to do is, this all came about to me because I had done piles of gel prints, and they're kind of cumbersome to store, so depending what paper you use, they're different sizes, and that just kind of bugged me. So I would also look at a paper and think that maybe I didn't really like the paper, or what am I going to do with this? And it helped me to clean up the edges, and then I kind of saw the paper differently. So instead of kind of seeing something with, all these different ratty-tatty edges, it kind of just cleaned it up. And the first couple of times I did it, I was just tearing off just the white and trying to leave as much as my design as I could. But there was really, unless I wanted to frame this in an 8x10 frame, I really don't need the whole thing. And I found that if I tore them off, leaving more of my actual print, then I had something interesting, and I can use all those scraps and not waste anything. So that's what I started doing. So I just trim off, and I have my pile that I've been working on here. And I try to vary them. I try to maybe even up and kind of have a somewhat straight pattern. It's not straight on the paper, so sometimes the paper ends up, wider at one end, and that's okay. I've started to kind of pay more attention to what I'm tearing off so that this is a nice usable piece. So I just take a ruler, a metal one works really well, and this one has cork on it, so I turn it upside down so that my metal is flat against my surface. And then I'm just going to take a paper. Now I did all of these either on the 21 pound copy paper or some rice paper. And of the rice paper, I have 2 different weights, and the thinner one I'm not wild about, so I didn't use as much of it, but that's kind of what I'm down to now. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball something that looks straight in my pattern, even though it's going to be crooked over here. I don't care about that. And just kind of leave some. Now the other thing that I do is I like to tear the short side of the paper first, because then that's going to make this now a short side, and they'll be similar lengths. I don't worry too much about it, and you'll see why. But if I do the ends first, depending on how much I tear off, now my sides are going to be a similar size. So that's just a little tip. And, you know, I learned these little things just from every time I do something, I think, oh, well, next time I'm going to do that, it will make it better. So let me grab one of the ones on rice paper, because you see there's more space here. Now, on some of them, if I ended up with my gel plate mostly at one end and have a very wide spot here, I will go ahead and trim some of that off. And now I have just some white strips that I could stamp on to make some faux washi tape looking paper. Just coffee stain it and use it to repair my pages in my journals and that kind of thing. So if I think I have enough, these I don't, it's pretty centered. I'm just going to leave this on. And as we go here, you'll see why. But I'm just going to kind of find a line again that leaves me a nice straight kind of even looking pattern. When I was first doing these, I didn't know what I was going to do with all these strips. So my strips were very wonky, which is okay. It's a look also, but I decided I wanted to kind of leave really good usable amounts of my pattern also. So I vary them. I don't want them to all be the same. So it's not like I, put my ruler where I have an inch worth of my pattern. You can do that if you want your pattern of the papers that we're going to create to be consistent. You can do that. You can just, line your ruler up so that you have that same width every time. But I just kind of find a line in my pattern. And then again, I end up with these really pretty pieces that maybe I just want to frame a bunch of these and make a collage on the wall. I have also used these. I'm working on a piece right now where this is rather large, but I've just taken and adhered them to a panel that I'm working on. So just kind of, think about what project you might be wanting to do and have that help determine, you can see this is a very messy line. This is on the thinner rice paper, like I said, that I'm not as wild about, but it will work. These papers are great for collaging with. Maybe just a little harder to work with for the paper that I'm going to create. Oops, I just did a long side. See, I didn't even follow my own rule. Okay, so I'm going to have to do this whole pile, but I'm going to show you what we're going to do with them next. Because that'll take me a little bit, but I'm telling you, it's very therapeutic just to sit there and tear that paper too. So we're going to take these now, and again, these are a mix of rice paper and the copy paper, which work fine. There's 2 ways you can do this. The first time I was playing around with this, I just glue these to each other without any sort of base. Now, some of these, because it's such a thin amount that I have here, I don't have much to attach to. It's probably enough, but for the ones that are too thin, I may put those aside and mount them on a substrate. So the skinny ones, I think I'll toss aside and kind of just keep ones that have a nice wide piece that I can glue to. And then I would just start kind of going, and I can reorder these however I want, but I kind of just look at what color I have and maybe what color might look good next to that. So I'm probably going to rearrange some of these because I already don't like what I have going on here. Let's see, like that one. And that's nice because this is nice and wide. I didn't trim this down. So I can just glue that to that one. That one's kind of narrow, so maybe this one. I kind of just lay out a few to get myself started. And sometimes when I'm looking at it, I will look at what a color that's here. It's not the same, but there's like a little reddish tone here, and there's a little bit of red in this one, and then this turquoise. So then maybe the next one I'll go and I have this is turquoise and this is turquoise. So I kind of just, you know, it's kind of just be intuitive about what you think looks good next to each other. Alternate them up, you know. You could do a certain color palette. So you're just going to kind of lay them out just to get an idea. You can just start gluing right away and then just grab these one at a time if you want to. You don't have to think that much about it even. Maybe I alternate this one because this has a wider spot for me to put this skinny one. So you're just going to kind of get an idea of what you want to do. And I have like thinner, wider, that kind of thing. So just, you know, your composition is kind of whatever you choose it to be. Okay, so you're going to take these then, and I'll just start with this one maybe. And for this, I use just a glue stick. I use Yoo-Hoo. I'll put a link down below for that. It's just my favorite one, but any kind, you know, will work. I like to use a glue stick because I'm using rice paper. And if you're using rice paper and gluing it to a substrate, then you could use something like matte medium, gel medium, that kind of thing. But if you tried to adhere this rice paper to another piece of rice paper, the glue just soaks into both of them. You need a drier glue that sits on top so that they can stick to each other. So glue stick works great. So I know I want to leave a little gap of white because I want to do some doodling in there. So I'm just going to put some glue stick on here. And you can see it's rice paper, so it's already kind of getting ripply and wonky. And then I'm just going to take the next one. And I'm already thinking I don't like that one right next to it. I like this better. So just kind of leave whatever gap that you want. Now I'm just eyeballing this, but I want to kind of keep my lines horizontal. So then I'll go next, and maybe I do like that one next. So I'm just going to do my glue. And I have been known to sit and spend an entire day doing this and just going through my whole pile. When I was in Utah and I was working on all these projects that I showed, I can't remember now because I think I did a video that I think I ended up trashing, but I want to say I can't remember how many papers I had, but I remember, I think with the pile of papers I had done, which is maybe similar to this, I don't really remember. I did over a dozen of these, just these different strips, you know, with the scraps, creating these papers. So that isn't bad there. And I do kind of like how I'm getting this wonky line, but then this one is nice and straight. So it kind of, it gets me back on track. And there's the little bit of red and a little bit of red. So let's put this one on now. I don't have as much room here, but I have a fix for that too. So when I do these, so this one's just going to have a thinner line, a thinner white line, but they're just all overlapping. Okay, so you're going to keep doing this until you end up with a nice big piece of paper size. I'm not going to take the time to do all of this because I have some examples to show you. So you would just continue on, and then the other way, you would just do it until this is one I did earlier today, and it ends up looking like this. And so this one was done with rice paper and the copy paper kind of just intermixed. It's kind of sturdiness wise nice that you can alternate them. But the reason I did this way without putting this onto another substrate is even if I just used a piece of copy paper, that's so thin it gets very wrinkly and really wonky, and I don't like that. But I want to keep it thin because if I'm going to be making something like these vessels, I want to wrap it around this, and it just goes on much nicer if it's thinner. So rice paper ones actually work really well. So I like to do some like this for the vessels. And then next step that I would do on this one is I would go to my paper trimmer and just kind of find the shortest one and trim that. You can use, if you don't have a paper trimmer like this, you can just use a knife and do it. But I'm just kind of trying to visually make that straight, even though it's maybe not going to be straight up here. In fact, I could trim this off because it's my end. And maybe I want to leave a little bit if I wanted to doodle on that, but I don't have to. So that just trimmed that up. And then I'm just gonna, like I said, kind of eyeball a line. And it's actually a little bit longer than that. And I save these too. I have a whole little bundle of these, and I'll show you one thing that I've done with those. So then I would kind of maybe try to get a straight line. And I can kind of see it's not exactly straight, so maybe I'm gonna kind of try to straighten it up a little bit. And then find kind of a spot. Because most of the projects that I'm going to do, for example, with these, we're going to end up wrapping it around something. I'm probably not going to do a container that tall anyway. Maybe I could split this one up and do 2 containers. So I don't worry so much about that size. But I do like to have enough this way. So you can kind of just keep going and going. So it's somewhat straight. I don't really care about that right now. Once we get to doing our project, then I can worry about if it's squared and all that kind of thing. So the other thing that I do with these is, I did one here, is you can also just use a substrate. In this case, I used a piece of mixed media paper because that can handle the glue better and not get so wonky. I do iron mine and put them under books from the back side, just to kind of flatten everything out. This one is still a little bit curly, but if you do it on mixed media paper, then you have a nice substrate. But this then makes it thicker. I have, again, a mix of the rice paper and the copy paper. You can just alternate them if you want. So same thing, and then I trim them off, and then I save these. Now, one of the things that I have done with these, this is not one I would show, it's kind of a practice thing, but I use them on these panels to just glue them on for my edges, so then I just haven't wasted it. So a lot of them, maybe I've painted under here already, and then I would just add that and trim off, and it just gives you some interesting edges. I've also taken these and used, again, another substrate, or just included them in your mixed media art, just as another element in a collage too. So don't throw these away. These you can use. So I have a little basket that I keep these in. So now we have our 2 different papers, the thinner one and now a thicker one. This one is great for making your cards and making the magnets and adding to panels and that kind of thing where you want to have kind of some dimension. I believe on this here is the thinner one, but you could use either one, but on this particular one I did use the thinner one. So for me, next steps then, once I have this, there's a couple things. I haven't done it on the thicker paper, but it would work, is I like to take this over to my sewing machine and do some stitching. This one doesn't require any further prep before you do your pen work, your doodling on it. This one does. So because you've used a matte gel medium, you kind of gave this a primer in a way, because there's when you're gluing something down, you're getting it on the top and underneath. So you don't have any kind of absorbency to even your rice paper. You can work right on this with the pens, different kinds, and I'll show you those without further prepping it. So you can sew on this too. And I would do things like, this is my pile currently that I am working on, doodling on. And let's see some that I have. I didn't stitch on the ones that I did in Utah because I didn't have a sewing machine there at the time. I do now. But here you can see where on the back, I can see which ones I had done stitching on. So I just like to do, one thing is if you had too skinny areas that you were worried about them being enough glue connection, you can stitch that, and so that will kind of reinforce that seam. And then if you have a piece of paper that was kind of boring, I just do some wavy stitch lines on that. And I even pulled some of it out, so now there's just little holes, and that just, adds a little bit of interest. And vary your stitches. This is some zigzag. You can do straight stitches. You can do change the length and scale of your zigzags. Maybe you have a machine that does other decorative stitches. Maybe you want to use a couple different colors of thread. I tend to just use black because most of my doodling, not all, I start with black and white. So you can just do some stitching if you have a sewing machine. And so I've done these, and I won't do it on every line. These are kind of stuck together now so I won't do it on every one, but I'll just kind of be selective about, maybe even it out through the paper. Again, these end up getting cut up. So I flipped these over backwards so I could see which ones had stitching. But they're going to all be cut up for who knows what. So it's just something, if you want to do, that would be my next step that I would do before I start doodling on them. So the other thing that I just started doing is, I'm going to see if I can find one that I don't like, and you can see what I mean. So let me see if I can get in here really well. If you're two things that can happen is you can see these, I've been playing around with for a while. And so sometimes when you're doing rice paper attached to another rice paper or even to the copy paper, you may not have gotten enough glue in a certain spot. So you might need to go back in there and add a little bit. So I kind of just check them from time to time. Sometimes it happens on the edges. I've kind of gone through these recently, and it's just probably because of the way I work with them. I'm constantly going back and forth between papers, so they get a lot of handling on them. But you might get them to kind of come apart like this. So I would just add a little bit more glue stick, just because it dries out. When we go to actually use them in a project, I don't worry about that because they're going to be glued to something else later on. This is just while we're kind of embellishing these papers that they kind of become a little fragile. So the thing that I also learned is some of the things that I use some Posca paint pens, and I'm going to pull my bin in here if you can see this. This is what I carry around with me. These are all my pens. I picked this up at Walmart. It's just a little, it's called Art Bin. And it was great for these Posca markers. And then this is like a section for maybe you're supposed to put paper or something in. But I just wanted to fill the whole thing up with pens. So I just put some of my containers in here. And some of these are just loose. But I just fit a couple of these little containers and sorted my pens. But they have this and I've got one stuck in here. So I have a variety. I have some jelly roll pens. Those really work well. You can get them in different sets. But I like sparkly things, so I have sparkle ones, the glittery ones. I have these Uniball pens. You can get these in sets with gold, silver, copper, white pens. And then I have some other just random acrylic. These are Royal Langnickel. I think Walmart carries these. They're just acrylic markers. Artistro, I got a couple of these white ones to try. These are the Uniball again. You can find sets in metallic colors. Some micron pens. And then I really like these Unipens, fine liners. And they come in, you can get sets with different sizes. So I like those just to have a variety of sets to do my kind of line work with. So I just toss those in there. And then these are smaller, different size Posca pens. So large ones, and then the medium and small ones in different colors. So that's what I use. But I have found the paint pens work great. They don't bleed or anything because they're acrylic paint. But if you're doing some finer markings, then you're using probably a pen, the Unipen or something like that. If you're doing that on rice paper, they have a tendency to bleed. But I don't have, like, all these dots, these lines, those were all done with a pen in here. So they end up not looking as nice. I clean that up sometimes by adding another color around it, or, maybe a different pen that doesn't bleed. The glitter ones don't really do that as much. The Unipens do. So my solution, these were done before I've thought of this, but my solution to that problem is to use clear gesso first. So what I would do as my next step then is I've, created my papers either on mixed media paper or just on each other. On these, I don't worry about it because this has some of the, matte medium on the top, and I think that it will work to absorb that. Now, if I'm wrong, I'll correct myself in another video because I haven't tried it yet. But on these, I know that they bleed. So my solution was to use clear gesso. You want to make sure it's clear because you don't have to be, if you were using white, you'd have to be very careful. Clear gesso is just going to dry clear. I just painted with a tiny brush. I just painted a little, just grab a brush and just paint a little coat of clear gesso on that. And I did try it. Now I don't know if I have the one I tried it on out. Let's see if I can find it, because I tried it and I did a sample on this one. So just today, I went ahead and painted a clear gesso on the rice papers. This is one that's just on itself, not on a backing. And this whole row I did with a pen, and it came out, it didn't bleed or run or anything. So I think you'll get better quality marks if you do the gesso first. So next step then would be gesso the white line, and then you just have at it. You can just start doodling all you want. And some of these are like ready to go and done, where I've done a lot on them. I like to use metallic, like I said. So I just kind of go by the design that was already there in my gel print, but you can see how much simpler they look here. And then when you embellish them, you just add a lot of detail to it. So this one has some stitching on it also. When I approach this, like say I want to go and add some stitching to this, like maybe I stitch here and just pick some random spots. Then I would go with my black pens, different sizes, maybe some markers, maybe some big fat ones. Here you can see they all just end up being different size and scale. So this one I've taken just a variety of different size black pens, a lot of thick ones you can see, and done some mark making, and then I can add color to it. So I will, when I look at this, I start out with my black and my white, and then I start going into my metallics and colors. And sometimes I go, kind of similar colors, so they don't stand out too much. But then sometimes I want a nice contrast, and so I'll maybe choose a color somewhere else in this paper, that will tie it together. Like maybe I want to take some of this orange and do it over here. in the end, it may all get cut up and those are not together anymore. But I don't know that. They may end up in the where you see them together. So it kind of just gives your whole project a more cohesive look. So everybody's going to be different in the way they do that. You know, everybody has different marks that they like to make and that kind of thing. So this is my next step, and you can see it takes a long time. I sit in the evenings watching TV, and because I'm using paint a lot of times, it needs to dry, even with pens and the gel pens and all that, they need to dry. So if I'm at my craft table, I can use my heat gun and dry in between. But what I normally do is I'm not sitting here, I'm sitting watching TV. So I will take one and maybe I start working at this end and do a line, or you can start in the middle so that your hand is not going over, you know, work your way down so you're not putting your hand into anything wet, and then I flip it. So I might work here a little bit. If this is wet, I flip it and work on the other side. If it's all wet, I take it, put it aside, and grab another paper. Sometimes I work where I will have a certain color and I will, you know, do that color wherever it looks like it wants to be on this page, move it aside, same color, I'll grab another paper and do all one color one evening. So it's just, you know, it's kind of just that methodical thing. And eventually I get to where I have some that are finished, and then I can move on to next steps. Like this one is pretty close to finished. I think it's probably ready enough for me. And then I will share what I do next with this. So I think that's enough information for today. You can start working on those. It's going to take a while to tear all these papers, and it's going to take many hours to create all of these little pieces. So I hope you're inspired and want to start creating and getting some of your papers ready to go so we can work on some other projects. So have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.